There we go.
There we go. Recording in
There we go.
progress, it says.
Awesome.
Yes. All right.
All right. William, hello.
Hello,
It's
Joann.
Friday. It's Friday. Here I have my little vintage barware. Wine. Clink, clink. It's a happy hour. Are we happy?
Yes.
Oh,
Happy day, Joann.
happy day. Well, I'm glad we're happy. I'm glad
Yes.
we're happy because it's important to be happy and for it not to rely on external circumstances. That's, from within. So anyway, so William, is it up to me to kick us off?
Well,
What should we
yeah.
talk about this
Yeah,
week?
sure. Folks, if with us, stay with us. It's nice if you can stay with us the whole time and subscribe to our channel. But welcome.
Welcome to our Friday happy hour. Talk politics, cultural stuff, whatever's going on. Anyway, so this week there's a lot going on politically. Since the last time we spoke, actually, there was an attempted assassination of a presidential candidate. And there's also been a convention of one of the major political parties. So lots to discuss, William. Just because I usually just blather at the beginning of our calls and just say things that are, surfacing for me. Yeah, the assassination attempt, that was just a really disturbing, shocking thing, even though, it's funny because I find that a lot of times we imagine, okay, there's so many guns, the country seems so divided. Like people have kind of maybe at times thought that we could lean into political violence, but it's another thing when it actually happens, there's always still a shock, that it's happening. Because we just really kind of see ourselves as Americans as something exceptional and some, the American exceptionalism thing, like these sorts of things happen in other countries, even though, we've had 3 presidents assassinated in our history, but it's been a long, long time ago, and, the 60s is the last time. So it was a bit of a shocker. It was a bit of a jolt. So, thank God, the assassination wasn't carried out. That would have been like a big, disaster for the country, I think, in a lot of ways. But it still was just a moment. It feels like, the crossing of the Rubicon, feels like we keep on crossing little Rubicons. And I'm hoping that we might go back the other way, but I feel like there's still little Rubicons we keep crossing. So that felt like a moment. So I'm very interested to hear what you want to say about that. And then in terms of the convention, I haven't really watched it. I think I've talked about the last couple of conversations that I'm personally kind of trying to take a break from things a little bit because it's just felt kind of overwhelming. And I personally, I have to tell you, a lot of people I've talked to, they're in the same place. They're like, you know what? I just kind of have been tuning it out lately. Not because we're going to permanently tune it out, but because we need a break, mentally. And, but so I didn't watch this convention, but I've still seen things kind of trickle in and.
Nor have I.
Yeah. But I kind of feel like it's just everything I've seen trickle in just feels like it looks like a personality cult. Like it looks like something from some, whack job sort of situation somewhere that we've seen in different places, Waco or these places like that. That has that feel to it. There's a weird feel to the cultishness going on at the convention. It feels a bit like untethered. So so this is where I begin this week, William. Kind of just trying to navigate these things in my head and I haven't really arrived at a place where I process these things. I'm just observing them at the moment. But I observe them with a bit of trepidation and concern. Yeah. Little Rubicons keep getting crossed. That's where I see that's. So grateful for your thoughts. I'm sure you've got lots.
Well, the first thought that comes to me is that of course, it's the whole culture of gun violence itself. I mean, I mean, my God, this is pretty serious stuff. I mean, a candidate for president was almost assassinated. I mean, literally, came within 2 inches of dying in front of the cameras. I mean, that's you talk about the Zapruder film. There was film all over this.
Right.
It's a pretty serious thing, but but if you look at the history, that really there have been attempted assassinations on virtually every candidate of the last century almost.
Really?
Yes, I mean there were well.
Did somebody try to kill Obama? I don't remember that.
Yeah, there was overseas. There was an attempt on Obama overseas.
I didn't realize that. Okay.
But it'll go back to like 1912. I thought this is the most interesting parallel, and that is that in 1912, Taft. I'm sorry.
William Taft.
No, I'm sorry. Teddy Roosevelt, who had been out of office, he had been president, and he had succeeded. Was it McKinley who was assassinated?
McKinley was assassinated.
And then Roosevelt became president.
And Grover Cleveland before that, right? I think.
Right, and Grover Cleveland before that, and then Lincoln before that. So, so anyway, so when Roosevelt was running the second time, there was an assassination attempt on him. He was actually shot. He was about to give a speech, and he was shot in the chest. And
oh my goodness!
He had a speech in his coat pocket that was folded to being 50 pages thick. And there was something else in his pocket that absorbed the force of the bullet.
Oh my goodness!
And he still stood up and gave his speech. And
are you serious?
And
That's so Teddy Roosevelt.
This is almost like
yeah, the fist. Oh my God!
Almost like the fist,
What a shot!
Then what happened is that in spite of this, in fact, in spite of this assassination attempt on Woodrow Wilson was elected. So you can't necessarily say this is the photograph that will win the election, but it's pretty darn close. So
yeah, that was a pretty amazing. You gotta hand it to him. He knows how to communicate both to his base and to the media.
Yeah, and also this his choice of J.D. Vance is actually perhaps inspired.
Really?
I think so. I mean he's no Sarah Palin, by a long shot. He's smart, and he is personable, and he is he calls himself a social conservative. And yeah,
isn't he the guy who says that he wants all abortion to be banned, including with no exceptions in rape and incest? This is the same guy you're talking about?
I'm not sure about that.
Yeah,
I haven't seen that, but what I'm saying is that in terms of his being in his 40s, and if Trump gets elected, and I suppose if Trump gets elected and then interprets the Constitution that he gets to serve a second term again, then I could see this as being a long-term relationship of this team with the United States. Because once they get in power this time, it's going to be awfully hard to get them out of power legitimately with elections. I think that if Trump gets in power this time, I think it would be awfully hard to get him out of power.
You mean like he won't
give
concede?
Up. Yeah, he won't. No. He won't concede one way or another. I think that he would be incredibly emboldened by being reelected.
Yeah. Oh, well, I mean, look what he did the first time.
Yeah.
I mean, that was like you know, and it's true in anything that once people have done it, they learn. I mean, this is true in anything in human endeavor.
Well, his
You
first,
learn, and the next time you do it, you're more effective. I mean, like truly. I mean,
well, I don't know, of course. I don't, I'm not there, nor do I study it that closely. But during his first term, uh, basically the government that he assembled, the traditional Republican Party helped him assemble that government.
right.
And the people
And part of it was to contain him. We
and
specifically put people into place to try to keep him in line.
right.
Yeah.
And so and to a certain extent that was successful. But near the end of that administration, you had these people who had very low level jobs really finally percolating to the top where they were holding fairly high. They didn't have high level jobs, but they had a great deal of power. Is his name Miller? I think this young man
Oh,
named,
Steve Miller.
yeah.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know,
He's a bit of like the Darth Vader,
well,
frankly.
he's sort of like a Himmler,
Yes.
in a way,
Yes.
and
Yes.
but he has been right with Trump throughout this period of time being out. So when they go in this time and form a government, it's going to be a different kind of government.
Oh, absolutely.
It,
No question about
it'll
it.
be filled with they now have their Rolodexes filled. They can really bring in and staff this government really full of ideologues in a government where they are saying that they have the power to fire anybody in government who doesn't go with their program.
That's right.
You know,
Like the sort of built-in civil service infrastructure in the federal government. They're looking, I mean, Project 2025 is
right.
about radically, I mean, they want to radically increase the number of appointees so that you are responding to policy making. I mean, you're responding to the president essentially and his other appointees. So, I work in civil service. There is a difference when you're in civil service between an appointee and somebody who is part of the civil service. There is a difference in it. So that difference is what kind of keeps balance in things sometimes. And I can see what the impact of what they're proposing would be, frankly. It'd
Yeah.
be a big impact. Yeah. A controlling impact from the appointees. Yeah.
What it in a modern society, in a modern worldwide society where we have international relationships taking place between our government and all the governments all over the world, and you can't have a wholesale transfer of power every 4 years when you have a new president come in and remain effective, because you have to have a certain learning curve in these high level jobs where you can't just walk in the door and take over and expect to have any real results. And so,
Absolutely. You cannot, because it's like I mean, I can just speak from working in civil service myself and like seeing you have people who are experts in their field. They know this topic technically. They know it at a technical level. And if you start making all of these things about, it's not what's most important in this role is not whether you are an expert in the role and you have a technical expertise and an experience. What becomes more important is whether you are in line with the current elected above you. And once that starts to happen, there's certain roles in civil service that can't be as effective because you need people in those roles who are experts, not ideologues, to actually do the job with any. So there's a lot of I heard all these stories. Like there was one, I can't remember where it was on some show or something, some guy who was literally just this is in the last administration, but he was literally just carrying Trump's papers around. I mean, I don't know what he was. He had some like low level job. And he was controlling his, I don't know, he was scheduling his schedule or something. And Trump said to him one day, they're in the White House, and he says, "Oh, who's my next meeting?" And he said, "Oh, it's the Office of Personnel." And he said, this guy said, "Oh, the Office of Personnel, they always give me so many problems." He said, "How about you? What about you? What about you taking over that meeting? You becoming the head of the Office of Personnel at the White House?"
Yeah.
And he made the guy who has no, I mean, he was literally just a gopher guy, put him in charge of the Office of Personnel at the White House. And he actually told that story. This guy was actually oblivious enough to it that he actually told that story on a talk show. Like he was laughing about it, like how I got to be head of the Office of Personnel at the White House, and almost like it was kind of like this crowning or something, when really it to me just demonstrated like this guy just wants to offload, this president just wants to offload something on you he doesn't want to do, and he just is giving it to this random person. And so I just say all that to say these are examples of how he operates, and how giving a person who operates that way so much power can be ultimately, it's not just about ideology. It's not just about things happening in line with their ideology. It's also just about things actually functioning. Like functioning. Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's true, but rather than really spend time talking about that,
Yeah.
uh, you know, what should the Democrats do right now?
Mm.
I mean, that's what I've been thinking about. What would be the most effective thing the Democrats could do at this point to seize the initiative, and and I mean, this is with 4 months left before the election, and let's make an assumption that Biden will be out in a week.
Absolutely.
I mean, he's out in a
I
week.
think
I think,
Pelosi
yeah,
went
yeah.
to
I
him
mean,
and was
there's
just
like
like, here it is.
60 congressmen have already signed off. They're
It's
going to
done.
lose. That's the problem is these
Down ticket races.
down ticket races. They're going to be all swept out of office if they're not careful. So let's make that assumption. So what could and should the Democrats do? And even though this isn't going to happen, what they need to do is to come together as quickly as possible. They should just almost move their convention up as quickly as possible, and all get together and spend the first part of the convention figuring out what their party's all about. In other words, what is our platform? Who are we, and who do we represent, and what do we stand for? And I think if they really examine themselves, and if they looked at their core values, so the core values of republicanism, of Roosevelt, going back almost to that time, and under very similar circumstances in some regards,
Mm,
because
mm.
Roosevelt here in this country saved us from what took place in Germany at that time, because he was able to give us Social Security, and
Love
he was
it.
able
You're
to give us
absolutely
social
right. Yeah.
programs that kept
Hmm.
us from being swept off into communism on one side or to fascism on the other. So
Right.
we need to do that. That is what needs to be done. And if the Democratic Party re-examined themselves and said, look, we were really the party of the working people and the shopkeeper, the small business owners. That's who we always really were, and we want to return to our roots, and address our social programming to them instead of our corporate benefactors that are paying to reelect us. See, that's the problem. When Clinton became a
Yeah.
new Democrat, when Clinton, Biden, all of them, when that whole gang, Pelosi, when they all became new Democrats in order to be elected, that they had to move to the middle. They had to adopt business-friendly policies in order to be elected, and at the same time, the Reagan Republicans stole the working class from them. just flat stole them. They just took them away. The silent majority, and addressed their social policies to them, and took them away, and that's where we are to this
But
day.
the thing is, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's almost so that was more a feat of communication than it was of actual policy, because basically they just pivoted and made everything the fault of the immigrants and this and that, and it's been going on for decades. And that's how they got those, because the Democrats were no longer really representing that swath of people in the country, and then the Republicans saw an opportunity to change messaging so that they could woo those people away. But they just changed messaging. They didn't change policies. I mean, there's still the policy, there's still the party of the rich. I mean, it's just essentially that they just changed their messaging and they focused on the grievance thing. And, it wasn't as bad as it was now, but that started back then. And now it's just kind of evolved to become like, it's basically, they're the party of grievance. And this is the entire way that they are getting people to vote for them from the groups of people that you're talking about. Is about immigration. It's about, it's about the woke, whatever. It's about, and but I don't see what they're offering on a policy level to those people to actually improve their lives. What have they done to improve those people's lives is my question.
Well, nothing at all. I mean, look at just healthcare itself. I mean, you start with the Clintons. I mean, that was their whole thing. They were going to bring in, and finally we're going to get national health care of some kind, a decent national health care program, and it just didn't happen. It didn't.
Not for lack of trying.
It didn't happen. Not for lack of trying. But the Heritage Foundation, they came up with their own program. The Republican, the conservative based think tank. I think it was the Heritage Foundation. Anyway, they came up with this alternative program at that time, and that became essentially the Republican program. So what happened with Obama was that he adopted that program. He basically adopted the Republican program.
Huh.
And of course, not a single Republican would vote for it, even though it was the Republican program. Obamacare is really the original conservative alternative health care program, and so that's so then along came Trump and said that he's going to replace Obamacare. That was his whole
with something
thing.
Great,
something grand, and for 4 years he kept talking about his grand program, and he's
never describing it. By the way,
he's still talking about it. And I bet you that if you took a survey right now at this moment across this country, and if you could have an honest survey of Trump supporters and how many of them are on Obamacare.
Yeah.
I mean, really, a huge percentage of them. And the ones that aren't are because they're in states that refuse to have anything to do with it or to work with it.
Or if Obamacare is not really, when I say Obamacare, Affordable Care Act, if the Affordable Care Act isn't effective in their state, it's because of the state won't let it be.
Right.
I mean, like in terms of but I mean, the whole thing about that Affordable Care Act did, the pre-existing conditions piece of the Affordable Care Act was one of the most fundamental things about it. That if you had a pre-existing condition, you couldn't be just thrown off healthcare and bankrupted by your medical bills. I mean, the sense of vulnerability in this country, that you have with the healthcare issue, it's just not the same in other places. I mean, I don't know. I mean, like, it's just not, people don't have those same concerns. And when you're living in this country, like, oh yeah, that's right. That's right. If I lose my job, I might not have health care. I might actually, not be able to, I might actually get diagnosed with something. Or if I have a diagnosis already, I won't get health care and I won't be able to have my medication covered and I'll go bankrupt and I'll have medical bills that I can't pay. So it's just like, I don't know. I just never understood the whole thing with the healthcare. I'm going down a rabbit hole. So I'm gonna stop myself there. But I agree with you. It's just, a lot of people who benefit from these very policies are voting to get rid of the policies.
Well, it's the same thing with Social Security. I mean, look at all the people in this country who are on SDI, surviving on SDI. It's a dangerous place we're at, and I think that at this point, I believe that the Republican Party focused in Trump and with his new running mate are more in tune with the working people in this country than certainly anyone that I can see that the Democrats are going to be able to bring forward at this point. And I think that the first choice they have is are they going to just anoint the first choice that Biden has, does he just anoint Kamala Harris and or does he open it up? You see, that's the question. That's the first question.
I don't think he has. So right now we're in a situation. I'm almost calling him Ruth Bader Biden in my mind, because because I really had a lot of respect for Ruth Bader Ginsburg, but she should have stepped down a while ago, before she died and when she was seated on the Supreme Court. The other thing too with him is that, like, at this point, they have, in order for his campaign to be able, the money that they've raised to be used, I think they have to give it has to be Kamala, because she's on the ticket when people have made these donations. If you change the ticket all of a sudden, I don't know if you can keep all those donations. And we're only 4 months from the election. So I don't think we have a choice to pivot to someone else.
Well, of course, the answer is you just do it and then say, well, sue us later. But of course, that's certainly more what the Republicans would say about the money, about the use of the donated money. But that I hadn't thought of that. But that could pose a legal problem. Yes, but actually can't. I mean, candidates often donate money that's been donated to them. They have leftover funds. Those become their discretionary funds.
Well, I know because Trump has used his, right?
Right.
If we're all kind of fight lawsuits and all kinds of things, it's just build a wall that wasn't there. And what was his face, Bannon or whoever it was that got, oh my God. So maybe you're right. Maybe there's a way around it, but my understanding is that is one and especially because we're so close to the election now. If he had come to this realization 6, 7, 8 months ago, but we're so close to the election now that every dime matters. And so it really, you see your options narrowing because of where we're at. And this is something that we shouldn't be where we're at right now.
So what should Biden do?
Well, he definitely needs to get out of the race, and he needs to do it ASAP. And he needs to basically, any way he can, like, try to find a way to transfer the campaign to whoever. But I mean, in terms of the convention, I personally think there was a piece written by Bill Maher. I think it was in the New York Times a couple of weeks ago. And he said, we don't like the fact of this, but it's the truth. He said that an open convention with the Democrats could be a huge shot in the arm to this, because basically you're in an election season where people don't like either candidate. There's the people who are going to decide the election are not the lunatics at the Republican National Convention, as frightening as they are. The people who are going to decide this are people who don't like either candidate and just feel like they have to hold their nose and vote if they decide to vote at all. Those are the people that you're trying to win over in swing states that will determine who becomes the next president. And I think that an open convention, if it's possible to do, if we can somehow get around this issue. An open convention could be a shot in the arm to the Democratic Party in the way that you're talking about, that we've lost our way as the Democratic Party. We now are seeing the cumulative effect of that, because what you're talking about, what I like, is like this analysis, right? It like is back in the 90s, the New Democrats, we lost our way. We kind of became disconnected to the very base that we always had, right? And like, this could be a real shot in the arm to the Democratic Party,
something
an
like
open
that.
convention.
You know, you're the internationalist. Didn't something like this just happen in England with the Labour Party?
I don't know if it was
Something
just happening.
similar. I mean, didn't the Labour Party come back into power after all this time?
Yeah, so Rishi Sunak, I think the current, or the, you know, he's no longer PM now, but he actually, I think, actually it was, well, there's a couple examples out there. One is, they're very different outcomes. But Rishi Sunak, I think they called elections on him. I don't think it was time for him to. I haven't watched British politics too closely lately. But yeah, the Labour Party has been out of power for 15 years. The Tories have been in power. So, you know, austerity, all the things going on in Britain. And the Labour Party's come back. The Labour Party's come back in power. But a lot of that has to do with people being sick of the Tories after 15 years of austerity and the same, you know, going back and forth. So they see the Labour Party now has had a resurgence. That's kind of, and you know, what they're saying is he's made boring sexy again, because I think people, you know, after Boris Johnson and all these people, these like more flamboyant figures, this guy, is it Farmer, whatever his name is, from Britain, like he's kind of like your random, he's kind of like your bureaucrat. He's kind of like, to my mind, he's like the Brits' Adam Schiff. I love Adam Schiff. He's a great, boring bureaucrat. I love him. Put him in. It's just like, that's what I want. You know, I don't need all these like personality cults, you know? So anyway, he's like that. So that's what's going on in Britain. However, you had something very different happen in France, right? With Macron, who decided, he called an election and it really went the other way against him. It was a bad decision. And now, you know, Marine Le Pen and the the fascist, or whatever you call it, nationalist party, really won in that election. And so
how are they going to form the government?
They're forming the government, but I've stopped. I don't know where it's at. I think they were forming it and it looked pretty scary, but then they're going to have to build a coalition. So maybe they'll be mitigated somewhat, but they did really well in that election. So Macron he made a strategic error. Let's put it that way. So that's what's happening across the pond, you know, with these sorts of situations that we have. We're in full-blown personality cult mode here. That's what I see. There's like very, very little substance, and it's all flash and emotion. And when you say that the Republicans took back the middle class and the working class, they did it through messaging and they did it through scaremongering and everything else. And you know what? Another thing that the Democrats need to stop doing is all of their identity politics stuff, because it just alienates a lot of people. It really does. And it is not working. In terms of, if you look at voting and you look at winning elections, it's not working. So, but
identity politics, meaning that they have their different constituencies that they're going after and tailoring their policies for these different minority
constituencies. Yes.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, they're like, well, I mean, it's one thing. I think the Democratic Party needs to be the party that acknowledges historical prejudice, that acknowledges that things need to happen. But then also it feels like it entirely became about that. So what if you are, I mean, let's be blunt. What if you are a, you know, working class white guy? You know, you don't, there's not messaging in the Democratic Party for you anymore. It's more about like people of color, it's about immigration, it's about this and that and the other thing. And I don't know how much we actually speak to the working class white guy, frankly. Right. I don't think we do.
Right. That's what I'm saying. They need to figure out what they want to be about.
Thank you.
That's it. They just need to figure that out, and then
in 4 months.
And that and God, it could be done, I guess, but you know, I suppose I was just imagining a debate between Kamala Harris and Trump. Um, you know, she may surprise us. She may
Well,
surprise us.
to be fair to her, I don't think she's been fair. I think when people have this diffuse, oh, they don't like her, but you try to pin them down on what they don't like, they don't know. So that always smells, if it doesn't pass the sniff test to me, it starts to feel like it's about being a woman or a black woman. I don't know. Um, but I don't think that she has, she was AG of California. She's been in sort of, I don't think she comes from a story that necessarily connects with people.
No.
That's the issue. And so people don't really feel like they know who she is. And if they don't know who you are, then they project. They project who they think you are. And I think that's what's happened with her. I don't think she has enough of a presence profile, her own thing for people to know. And that's why I think they say they don't like her, but they don't really know why.
No. Yeah, I was imagining, they could open the convention up and actually have a debate, have the candidates actually come in and debate and have an
I
old
think it'd be
fashioned,
great.
just
I think it'd be great.
yep.
I think we should just go do.
I think
it's time. It's time to throw it out. It's time to throw out the baby. It's just to try to just throw out what we convention and just have an open convention and do a debate and have it be a real, not a coronation, but a real party self-seeking sort of moment.
Well, I remember during the political conventions in the 50s and the 60s when Walter Cronkite would be up in the box, up high, and you'd have reporters down on the floor, and the whole country would just be riveted by this convention because you didn't know who was going to be the candidate.
Imagine.
Yeah.
Imagine not knowing. Everything is so stage managed now.
Right.
Everything.
Yeah. Which, you mentioned the stage management of this convention that just in. I guess that was the White House was the stage that they put up. Was that the face of the White House?
Oh my goodness. I wouldn't know. No. But all
but
I
it
saw
was
was
just
a picture
huge,
of
just these gigantic Trump, and
the lights. All I
yeah.
saw was the Trump
Yeah.
lights, and it looked like it was some cheesy, horrible Las Vegas sort of sideshow.
Well, I'm just finishing a documentary, a Netflix documentary, a docudrama kind of on Hitler. And
Oh goodness.
it's just there's so many parallels. It's just really, really frightening about where we are in this country today, and with this election and where we're going. And as soon as I heard about this, uh, uh, the first thought I had I'm talking about the assassination. First thought was all of these science fiction books and movies that have been made about someone coming from the future back to shoot Hitler
Oh.
and saving millions of people,
Oh.
and it's almost like, it's like this boy he was just such a boy,
He
just
looked like he was
little
14.
14-year-old
Like he
boy.
was barely out of puberty. I mean,
You wonder what was in his mind because according to the information, he was the Republican. In school, he would be like the only kid who would be standing up to being a Republican for conservative principles, and and uh,
huh.
and it's sort of strange. Apparently, they found no diaries. Really, there's nothing that's telling us why he did this. He was looking at both Biden's schedules and Trump's schedules. Maybe he was just there to shoot somebody, and it wasn't ideological at all. But the first thought, once I kind of had those thoughts, the other thought that occurred to me is that we're probably well, okay, had Trump been assassinated, he certainly would have been a martyr.
Yeah.
We would have had a martyr cult in this. He would have been on Mount Rushmore. I mean, within 10 years. I mean, I just, and I thought to myself that maybe what's in the cards is he's dealt these cards. He's just going to have to play them. You know, this is what this is going to have to play out. What's going to happen with him, and that includes his own the consequences of what's happening with him. I
The
mean,
thing is, we're all going to be
look at what happened to
ride.
Germany. Look at what happened to Germany. The German people put their their identity with Adolf Hitler. I mean, 100%. And they went down with him. And is that what the people of this country want? Are they prepared? And then
What's the percentage? I mean, I'm
but they
curious.
also see it. They also see it, and when you put it in those terms, well, that's just Armageddon, and I'll just be raptured up to heaven. If that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, that's a problem with the Armageddon cults. I'm really curious. Like, what were the percentages in Germany? I mean, we must know this now, of people who actually really were supporting the Nazi Party and those who were just kind of like stuck. You know what I'm saying? Like,
no, it was huge.
Was it? Okay.
Huge numbers. No, when you look at those crowds of people that would turn out, I mean, just masses and masses and masses of people would turn out for those events. The German people really came with, it really became a cult. They worked at it. I mean, it was a whole propaganda cult, and we're seeing the same thing. I mean, right back to the blood on the ear and the fist in the air.
Oh God.
The
the patches on the ears. Oh my God. Yeah. Well, one thing I will say though is, I mean, I think that the States, yes, we can draw parallels with Germany, it's for sure. And there's parallels and everything, but I think the States is still a different animal. And like, we've got this sense, unlike Germany. When Germany has provinces and Bavaria, all this stuff. But like we have this sense like the states' identities. And like I'm not trying to say that that's going to necessarily save us, but I'm just saying that basically it's a different dynamic than what was in Germany. I mean, we do have a kind of identity, and we do have a kind of, I think in certain parts of the country, they're just not going to go along in the same way. It's just that it's part of our structure of how we're put together, So I don't know. I agree with you. Maybe I'm being a bit like Pollyanna or something, but I tend to think that the structure that we're in will make it harder for it to happen to that degree. No, I'm fine.
Well, you about ready to wrap it up?
I am.
Yeah, it's about that time.
Yeah.
Well, folks, thanks for sticking with us. Those of you who stayed with us through this, we always appreciate it. And as we say, cheers to the people, all of the people, and may your consent to be governed never be taken for granted. So tune in, folks. Take a look at thevoter.io for more information on the Voters' Bill of Rights. And if you're interested in any of my books, they're all for free at williamjohncox.com. But particularly,
a dose of sanity, folks. A dose of sanity.
Take a look
right there
at the Voters' Bill of Rights, a Transforming America, and so because we're just trying to do what we can do. That's it. That's why Joann and I come together here each week and we chit chat for an hour and we share it with you, and some thousands of you have been watching it. We appreciate it, and maybe it will make a difference. But
yeah,
we have to do what we can do, and if nothing else, what you can do is every voter should ask every candidate for every elective office in this country, do you support our voters' Bill of Rights?
That's right. And
Okay.
if they say, what's that? You send it to them.
Yeah, to the voter.
And then
Now,
tell me in
you
a
know,
week. Respond in a week. Yeah.
Yeah.
Here you go. I'll be coming back to you in a week to say, do you support it or not? Yeah.
Right. Okay, folks.
Cheers.
Thanks for stopping by.
Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Let's stop the recording.